The letter never sent. I met him on a chilly autumn afternoon. The wind blew gently, carrying the faint scent of fallen leaves and a touch of early season cold. The small street I was walking on that day was covered in a soft layer of golden leaves. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the branches, dancing into gentle streaks on the ground. I was in a hurry. I clutched a stack of books to my chest and looked down to avoid tripping over the roots sticking out of the path. Yet in a moment I couldn't react in time. I bumped into someone. My stack of books almost fell, and I was embarrassed to the point of not knowing what to say. He stood in front of me, slightly bending down to pick up the book I had dropped. His smile was light and natural, like a smile reserved for something familiar. He said sorry, even though clearly I was the careless one. At that moment, I only remember my heart beating strangely fast. It felt as if I had encountered a familiar melody from long ago, though I couldn't remember where I had heard it. From that day on, somehow, he entered my life. He was like a gentle breeze passing by, yet leaving a lasting echo. We often met at a small cafe at the end of the alley. The cafe wasn't large, just a few old wooden tables and the smell of roasted coffee each afternoon. But perhaps because of its simplicity, I felt an unusual sense of peace. He liked to sit near the window. The light falling on his face sometimes made me turn away secretly. I was afraid he would see the expression in my eyes. We talked about very small things in life, a new book we read, a movie we just watched, work matters. Sometimes it was about worries so ordinary that hardly anyone noticed. But for me, just hearing his voice made those worries feel lighter. I didn't know when my heart had changed. I only remember that each time I heard his footsteps entering the cafe, I felt flustered without understanding why. Each time he laughed, I wanted to turn away, afraid he would read the thoughts in my eyes. Then I became afraid. I feared that just one word spoken would shatter all these beautiful things. I feared that the fragile friendship between us would vanish, like a leaf touching the water and sinking. So I stayed silent. I did not speak. I did not confess. I did not dare to face my own feelings. I collected everything in a place only I knew, the white pages of my notebook. Every night was the same. When the city quieted down, I sat by the window and wrote. The dim yellow light fell on the pages. Outside, streetlights glimmered in orange patches, making the street look like it wore a thin veil. I wrote about him, about small moments that no one else would remember but were deeply engraved in my heart. I wrote about how he shielded me from the sun when we walked together at noon, though he never mentioned that the sunlight hit his eyes. I wrote about how he silently listened when I told nonsense stories, occasionally saying, "Uh-huh," but his eyes were always full of care. I wrote about sudden, rainy afternoons. We stood under the roof, listening to the rain hit the tin, saying nothing, but I felt a strange sense of peace. Yet those letters, I never sent them. I didn't have the courage. There were days he was away for work, only a few days, yet I felt something familiar was missing. I missed his voice. I missed how he focused on reading in the cafe. I even missed the way he laughed at stories that weren't funny. I drafted messages for him dozens of times. "What are you doing? Are you tired? I miss you." But then I deleted them. I was afraid he would think I was strange, or worse, that he would distance himself from me. One winter evening it drizzled like dust. The cafe where we usually met was quieter than usual. I sat and waited for him. I wasn't sure why, but my heart felt a little heavy. When he walked in, his coat wet from the rain, his shoulders shivered lightly from the cold. He smiled at me, a smile that made me want to cry. I wanted to tell him how much I loved him, but in that very moment I feared losing him even more. I opened my notebook and wrote a short paragraph. "If one day I can no longer be by your side, know that I loved you with all that I had. Not for you to reciprocate, but so that I wouldn't have regrets." When I closed the notebook, I vaguely sensed that something was about to change. Then the day he left, the city came. It wasn't that he abandoned me. He had to go for a bigger opportunity and work. I stood on the corner, watching him pull his suitcase toward the station. He glanced back and waved. That familiar smile made my heart tighten. I didn't run to him. I didn't try to hold him back. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, as if keeping the most beautiful moments safe for myself. He didn't know. He would never know that there had been someone behind him, quietly watching over him with a love that had no words, no name, no demands. Time flowed like a silent river. I still lived, still worked, still smiled every day. But sometimes, when I passed the old cafe, I stopped for a long while. The small wooden table was still there. The old window was still there. The sunlight still shone like before. Only he was missing. Years later, one day, I happened to find that old notebook. I opened it page by page. The words were still there, slanted and soft, carrying the breath of a youth full of emotion. I read every line, every sentence, and smiled. No more pain, only tenderness remained. I realized that love that is not expressed doesn't mean it's not beautiful. Some feelings only need to exist in the heart, quiet yet deep, enough to warm a lifetime. I know that, even if he never reads those letters, even if he never knows how much I loved him, that love still made me grow. It taught me to cherish someone, to love without needing to be loved back, and to let go without resentment. Today, when I face life, I still smile thinking of him, because the love I gave him, though never sent, remains the most beautiful part of my youth. And sometimes the most beautiful thing isn't walking together to the end of the road. It's having once dared to love someone wholeheartedly, with all the sincerity you have.